evening, ladies and gentlemen. 6 o'clock Cairo local time, and I'm Shireen Wakil. Time for our news bulletin from Channel 2, and I welcome my new colleague, Lamia Abdul Sattar. Welcome to Nile TV International.
Thank you very much, Shireen. Thank you.
As usual, we start our news by the news headlines. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi follows up financial performance indicators of the public budget. Hezbollah rockets hit Haifa, Tabriz in southern Israel, 10 people injured. And on October 7th anniversary, most Israelis support the war expansion into Lebanon, despite its raging on in Gaza. Good evening. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Monday followed up on the financial performance indicators of the public budget and government efforts to achieve financial balance. At a meeting with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Finance Minister Ahmed Kojak, the President ordered comprehensive institutional reform to proceed forward with the aim of ensuring financial discipline and good governance, rationalizing public spending, boosting public revenues, and reducing government debts. Finance Minister's efforts to achieve financial balance are set to improve national economy performance, notably amid rising regional challenges that have negative economic fallout. The presidential spokesman, Ambassador Ahmed Fahmy, said the meeting also reviewed government measures to attract more local and foreign investments, which include recently announced tax incentives and facilitations. The meeting also discussed efforts to reduce government debt in an integral way that also improves different debt indicators on the medium run.
Accelerating developments in the Middle East featured prominently at a phone call today between Minister of Foreign, Migration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs, Badr Abdelati, and his Iranian counterpart, Abbas Araghchi. Abdelati stressed the necessity of de-escalating tensions and practicing self-restraint at such a critical time in order to avoid sliding into regional war, which could lead to grave repercussions on the security and stability of peoples in the entire region. The top diplomat reiterated Egypt's absolute rejection of any violation to Lebanon's sovereignty and asserted the urgent need of an immediate ceasefire. The minister further affirmed the importance of enabling the Lebanese national institutions, on top of which the Lebanese army, and supporting all parties in the country until electing a new president. He highlighted the extreme importance of halting Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and allowing unhindered and unconditional humanitarian and medical aid into the war-torn enclave.
As the Israeli aggression in Gaza entered a second year today, Israeli airstrike continued on Monday, a day after 39 people were killed in several Israeli massacres, mainly in northern and central parts of the territory. Thus, the death toll increases to 41,909 people, in the majority civilians, since the start of the war. Israeli tanks advanced into Jabalia refugee camps as the Israeli occupation army expanded evacuation orders in Jabalia to cover areas in the northern towns of Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia. Residents said Israeli forces pounded Jabalia from the air and the ground, and medics said several Palestinians had been killed, with rescuers unable to reach some of the victims. In the central city of Deir el-Balah, an Israeli airstrike hit tents inside Al-Aqsa hospital, wounding 11 people, including a journalist.
Hamas armed wing said it fired a barrage of rockets at Israel's commercial hub, Tel Aviv, on Monday, as it marked the one-year anniversary of the group's October 7th operation. The group said in a statement that the Azz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades struck deep into the occupation's territory, targeting the city of Tel Aviv with a barrage of M90 missiles as part of the ongoing war of attrition.
After a year since the war started in Gaza, Hamas resistant movement said in a statement that the 7th of October was a historical fighting turning point and a natural response to the Israeli plans to liquidate the Palestinian cause. It stressed that there is no laxity in concerning the right of Palestinian project in resisting the occupation with all means. The resistance movement, Hamas pointed that the movement has exerted and still exerting great efforts to stop the aggression and ending suffering of the Palestinian people, and responded to all initiatives positively and stayed sticking to permanent ceasefire and total withdrawal of the occupation. The Hamas movement also affirmed that coward assassination crimes carried out by the occupation against leaders and figures of the resistance will only add to their strength. It pointed that the occupation winding the circle of conflict to include Arab and Islamic countries proves that there is a real danger, threatens the security and stability of the region. It also held the United States accountable to Israel's continuation of its aggression.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrations were held in major cities from Jakarta to Istanbul to Buenos Aires on Sunday on the first anniversary of the Israeli war in aggression in the Gaza Strip that Israel launched allegedly in response to Hamas' cross-border attack on October 7th. In Morocco's capital Rabat, thousands marched by the parliament and called on the government to revoke its 2020 agreement, formalizing the country's ties with Israel. The protest in Rabat was among the largest in months. In the southern Pakistani city of Karachi, a massive pro-Palestinian rally was organized by the country's largest religious political party, Jamaat Islami. Earlier on Sunday in Australia, thousands of people rallied in support of Palestinians and Lebanon. Protests were held on Saturday in European capitals as well as Washington and New York.
Lebanon's Hezbollah claimed an attack in Haifa in northern Israel late Sunday, targeting a military base south of Haifa with a salvo of Fadi-1 missiles, and launched another attack on Tabriz, 65 kilometers away. Israeli police confirmed that rockets had struck Haifa, and local media said 10 people were wounded there. The occupation army also said 15 other rockets were fired inland at Tabriz in Israel's North Galilee region. Some of them intercepted. Israeli police said some buildings and properties were damaged, and there were reports of minor injuries, with some people taken to a nearby hospital. Meanwhile, Hezbollah said it has repelled Israeli ground incursions into Lebanon's south. The group vowed to keep up the fight against Israeli aggression in a statement on the anniversary of Israeli war in the Gaza Strip.
According to Lebanon's health ministry, an Israeli airstrike on an apartment building in the Lebanese capital killed 9 people. A new round of Israeli airstrikes hit Beirut suburbs late Sunday as Israel intensified its bombardment of southern Lebanon earlier. The military also said airstrikes also hit Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon and the Beqa area, including weapons storage facilities, infrastructure sites, a command center, and a launcher. Lebanese health ministry said that 22 Lebanese were killed and 111 others wounded in southern areas. The Lebanese government estimates that some 1.2 million people in Lebanon have been displaced, mostly during the Israeli escalations less than a month ago. Total death toll has reached 2.83 martyrs and 9,869 injuries.
Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi warned Monday that Israeli aggression was pushing the region towards the abyss of full-blown war during a visit to Lebanon, where Israel keeps striking what it says are Hezbollah targets. Safadi told a news conference that a ceasefire in Gaza is the first step towards putting an end to regional escalation.
According to a survey for the Israel Democracy Institute last week, 80% of Israelis said it was right to launch an offensive in Lebanon, even though the war in Gaza is still going on. The Palestinian cross-border operation against Israel on that day was in protest against 16 years of blockade and 56 years of Israeli occupation and violations of Palestinian rights. Details follow.
According to a survey for Israel Democracy Institute last week, most of the Israelis are eager that Israel continues its war of aggression it launched in Gaza Strip in response to Hamas attack, despite the worldwide condemnation of the devastating war that is also expanding. On October 7th last year, Hamas-led Palestinian fighters raided settlement communities across the borders of Gaza with Israel in protest against 16 years of blockade and 56 years of Israeli occupation and violations of Palestinian rights. Hundreds of Israelis were killed, while some 250 captives were taken into Gaza, according to Israeli authorities. Israel's disproportionate response has leveled Gaza, killing over 42,000 people and displacing nearly all its 2.3 million people. Although increasing number of Israelis have called for a ceasefire in Gaza recently, there has also been wide support for war. Some 80% of Israelis said it was right to launch an offensive in Lebanon, even though the war in Gaza is still going on, according to a survey for Israel's Democracy Institute last week. The reason is that images of the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza are almost totally absent from television, apart from footage filmed by the occupation military or reports from embedded journalists accompanying Israeli troops. There is also little recognition for the fact that for Palestinians, the destruction of Gaza is a reminder of their historical Nakba or catastrophe in the war of 1948, and that today's Palestinians are the descendants of Nakba anniversary.
Kiev said Monday its forces had struck a large oil terminal overnight on the occupied Crimean Peninsula. Russian-installed authorities in Crimea said a fire had broken out at an oil facility in the Black Sea port town of some 70,000 people, and that there were no casualties. The Russian Defense Ministry earlier said Russia's air defense units destroyed 21 Ukrainian drones overnight, including 12 over the Crimea. Russian state news agency RIA reported that Russia's defense ministry also added that its forces had taken control of a settlement in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region.
Egypt's stock market indices collectively rose at the start of the week, dealings boosted by active transactions of the industrial sector's shares. The market capital of listed companies added 28 billion Egyptian pounds, reaching 2.249 trillion pounds at the end of overall transactions that stood at 45.4 billion pounds. The benchmark EGX 30 index closed higher 0.31% at 31,819 points. The equal weighted index EGX 70 and the more expanded EGX 100 index were both up 0.18 and 0.41% respectively.
And as usual, we wind up our news bulletin with sports, where title holders Al Ahly will face Orlando Pirates of South Africa after both were placed in Group C, along with Rebab Belouizdad of Algeria and Stade Abidjan of the Ivory Coast. When the CAF Champions League group stage draw was held today in Cairo at the Confederation of African Football Officers. The reigning African champions are the team to beat in the Premier African Club competition as they seek a historic third straight title, having won the past two finals. For an unprecedented 12th time, the Cairo Red Devils, coached by Swiss Marcel Koller, are unbeaten in 24 Champions League matches since a 5-2 loss to Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa early last year. That was all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Thank you.